You ever meet someone who feels like a key to a door you didn't even know was locked? That's what Jake was to me. A promise wrapped in a crooked smile, a whisper that I could be more than the sum of my scars. I was 28, drowning in the grease and grit of a dead-end diner, when he walked in and turned my world upside down. He didn't just ask me out. He convinced me to quit my job, to trade my apron for a dream he swore we'd build together. I leapt, heart pounding, eyes shut, into his arms, his life, his lies. For a while, it was magic, the kind of story you'd tell your grandkids. But fairy tales don't warn you about the fall, about the night you find him with someone else, your couch stained with betrayal, your bank account empty, and a secret in your pocket that could burn it all down. How did I get here? From flipping burgers to standing in the rain with nothing but a broken heart and a truth I almost missed? Sit down, pour some coffee. This is the tale of how I lost everything to a man I loved, and how I clawed my way back from the edge. Marty's Diner was my prison and my refuge, a squat brick building on the edge of town where I'd spent 6 years slinging hash browns and dodging greasy hands. I'd started there at 22, after Mom's cancer turned my life into a blur of hospital corridors and unpaid bills. Back then, I'd been an art student. Sketchbooks stuffed with charcoal dreams, a cheap apartment filled with half-finished canvases. But cancer doesn't care about your plans. I dropped out, swapped my pencils for a spatula, and worked double shifts to keep her alive. When she passed, 2 years of whispered prayers and sterile rooms, I didn't leave the diner. It was a lifeline, a steady hum of clinking plates and burnt coffee that kept me from drifting into the void she'd left behind. I told myself I didn't need more, even as the ache in my feet and the weight in my chest grew heavier every day. Then Jake blew in like a summer storm. It was a muggy Tuesday, the diner thick with the smell of fryer oil and regret, when he slid onto a stool at my counter. He ordered a black coffee, his voice low and smooth, and fixed me with hazel eyes that sparkled like he knew something I didn't. He was scruffy, beard a little wild, flannel shirt rolled up over tattooed forearms, hands calloused from turning wrenches. "You don't belong here," he said, sipping slow, watching me over the rim of his mug. I laughed it off, a pickup line, I figured, but he came back. Tuesdays, Fridays, sometimes Sundays, always with that grin that made my pulse stutter, always with a question that peeled back another layer. "What did you want to be, Ellie, before this place swallowed you?" he asked one night, leaning close enough I could smell the faint tang of motor oil on his skin. I hesitated, then mumbled about art, about the sketches I used to lose myself in. He nodded, like he'd seen it in me all along, and something in me shifted. We started dating in the fall, when the air turned crisp and the leaves crunched under our boots. He'd pick me up after my shifts, his old pickup rumbling in the parking lot, and we'd drive out to the edge of town, headlights cutting through the dark, his hand warm on my thigh. He ran Hanson's Fix-It, a little garage where he patched up cars and charmed customers with that easy drawl. He'd tell me stories about growing up wrenching engines with his dad, about the time he rebuilt a Mustang from scrap, and I'd hang on every word, drunk on the way he made me feel seen. 6 months in, he started pushing. "Quit the diner, Ellie," he said one night, sprawled on my lumpy couch, his fingers tracing circles on my arm. "You're too good for that grind. Come work with me, be my partner, not some fry cook." His eyes glowed with it, this future he spun like a web, us, side by side, building something real. I'd lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, imagining it. No more sore feet, no more Marty's gruff orders, just me and Jake, a team. "I've got you," he promised, pulling me close until his heartbeat drowned out my doubts. Trust me. Quitting was a battle. Marty threw a fit, slammed a skillet on the grill, called me ungrateful, said I was family and I was breaking his heart. The cooks watched, silent, as I stood there, apron balled in my fists, stomach churning. "You're throwing away something good for that grease monkey," Marty barked, but I shook my head. Jake was waiting outside, leaning against his truck, and when I stepped out, he kissed my forehead. "You did it," he said, proud. "We're free now." I started at the garage the next week, filing receipts in a cluttered office, booking oil changes, answering phones with a voice that shook at first but steadied over time. It wasn't pretty. The place smelled like gasoline and rubber, the floor sticky with spilled coffee, the radio crackling with old country tunes. But Jake would catch my eye from under a hood, flash that smirk, and I'd think, "This is ours. This is enough." The cracks came slow, insidious, like frost-splitting stone. He'd vanish, middle of the day, no heads up, claiming he was chasing parts or meeting a guy about a deal. I'd call, and he wouldn't pick up. I'd ask where he'd been, and he'd shrug, eyes sliding away. "Don't worry about it, Ellie," he'd say, voice tight, and I'd swallow my questions. Then the money thinned out. The garage's cash flow, never great, trickled to nothing. Bills piled up on the desk, electric, rent, a parts supplier threatening to cut us off. I'd dig through the books, numbers blurring, and ask him what was happening. "I'll handle it," he'd snap, sharp enough to make me flinch. "Just do your job." We moved into a dump above a laundromat. Walls stained with mildew, pipes rattling, the constant hum of dryers below, to save cash. I started eating ramen, then just saltines, while he swore things would turn around. I'd given up my anchor for him, and now I was sinking, tethered to a man who wouldn't look me in the eye. The first clue was a gut punch I tried to ignore. I found it in his truck, digging for a pen, a crumpled receipt, $50 at a steakhouse, dated a night he'd said he was working late. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine. My throat closed up, but I didn't confront him. Maybe it's a client, I told myself, clutching that lie like a lifeline. Maybe I'm paranoid. I wanted to believe him, needed to, because if I was wrong, the whole shaky tower I'd built with him would collapse. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Thursday, rain hammering the garage roof like it wanted in. I'd stayed late, hunched over payroll in the dim office, trying to stretch $150 across bills that screamed past due. Jake had left at 5, muttering about a supplier run, his phone off when I texted goodnight. By 10 p.m., I locked up, boots splashing through puddles as I drove home, exhaustion dragging at my bones. His truck sat outside our building, and relief flickered, until I climbed the stairs and heard it, a laugh, bright and careless, cutting through the drone of the laundromat below. A woman's laugh. I pushed the door open, and the world cracked apart. Jake sprawled on our couch. My couch, the faded green one Mom left me, the one I'd cried on when she died, with a blonde I didn't know. Her legs were slung over his lap, her fingers twirling a glass of wine. Red, cheap, staining her lips. His shirt hung open, chest bare, that lazy grin plastered on his face like he owned the moment. The air reeked of her perfume, floral, cloying, suffocating. They froze when I stepped in, rain dripping off my hoodie, pooling on the warped floor. "Ellie," Jake said, voice calm as glass. "It's not what it looks like." Not what it looks like? The words echoed, hollow, as rage and hurt clawed up my throat. I wanted to scream, to hurl that bottle at his head, to tear the lies out of him and the smugness off her face. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The blonde stammered, "I should go." Scrambling up, her heels clicking, but Jake stayed put, arms crossed. "This is my place too," he said, cold and defiant. "You don't get to kick me out." He was right. His name was on the lease, another chain he'd wrapped around me. I stood there, soaked and shaking, staring at the man who'd unraveled my life thread by thread. Then I turned, grabbed my purse, my last $20 stuffed inside, and walked back into the storm. The rain swallowed me whole. I wandered, no direction, no air, until I collapsed at a gas station, clutching a styrofoam cup of coffee that tasted like ash. My phone buzzed. Jake, texting excuses, apologies, garbage, but I deleted them, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the rain. I'd trusted him with everything, my job, my home, my heart, and he'd torched it all, left me with nothing but the clothes on my back and a hole where hope used to be. I sat there, shivering, replaying every moment, the late nights, the missing cash, the way he'd stopped touching me like he cared, until the weight of it crushed me. Tara pulled me from the abyss. My high school friend, the one who'd warned me about Jake's snake oil charm, showed up at dawn with a quilt and a fierce glare. "You're not done," she said, shoving a mug of tea into my trembling hands. "He doesn't get to bury you." But I felt buried, suffocating under shame, trapped in a loop of how did I not see? I crashed on her couch, a ghost in her living room, staring at the ceiling as days bled into weeks. She'd nudge me, make me eat, force me to shower. But I was hollow, a shell of the girl who'd leapt for Jake's stars. Then one night, half dead on her sofa, I scrolled my phone and found it, a lifeline in a blurry photo. It was the garage ledger, snapped months ago when I still believed in us, a quick shot of his scrawl I'd taken to double-check some totals. I zoomed in, and the truth slammed into me like a fist. Fake invoices, hundreds, maybe thousands, funneled out of the business into nowhere. Cash withdrawals he'd never explained. Payments to suppliers who didn't exist. My hands shook as fury replaced despair. He hadn't just cheated with her. He'd robbed me blind, bled the garage dry while I ate crackers and prayed for better days. I could have run to him, smashed that photo in his face, watched him squirm, but I didn't. I went to Marty. He was still sore, apron stained with grease and resentment. But when I spilled it all, Jake, the blonde, the money, the photo, his eyes softened. "You're a damn fool, Ellie," he said, voice gruff. "But you're my fool. Job's yours if you want it." I nodded, tears spilling over, and slipped back into the diner like a prodigal daughter. The clatter of plates, the hiss of the grill, the jingle of tips in my apron. They stitched me back together, slow and steady. I saved every dime, sleeping on Tara's couch, plotting my next move. Mike, Tara's cop boyfriend, dug into Jake's mess. The blonde wasn't just a fling, she was his partner, a grifter who'd been scamming small businesses with him for years. My photo was the key. The cops found more. Bank records, fake IDs, a trail of wrecked lives stretching across 3 counties. I watched from across the street as they cuffed him, his shouts echoing my name, begging for help. The blonde glared, venom in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. They'd taken my trust, my savings, my pride, but they hadn't taken me. A year later, I've got a tiny apartment. No Jake, no ghosts, just a bed and a table I bought with my own cash. I'm taking night classes, learning bookkeeping for real, turning chaos into something honest. Jake's in jail, the blonde's out on bail, probably spinning new webs somewhere. I'm not who I was, not the dreamer who fell for him, not the wreck he left behind, but someone new, forged in the fire of his betrayal. Last night, a guy came into the diner. Black coffee, quiet smile, eyes that lingered a little too long. He slipped me his number as he left, scribbled on a napkin, and I didn't toss it. It's sitting on my counter now, a whisper of possibility, or maybe danger. Am I crazy to think about calling? Is this a chance to start over, or just another storm brewing? What do you think? Should I risk it, or keep running from the shadows?